known as the emergency medical relief, and we deal with emergencies. We deal with capacity building when we need to rush within minutes, within hours to the definitive care for many of the patients who are in some form of a disaster, which could be man-made or which could be which could be natural disaster. In those moments, when we try to do that, we know the value of each minute, each second. And then when I start looking after NCDs, I try to contemplate on those precious minutes. For us in NCDs, there are so many things which we could have prevented when we particularly the habit forming substances in form of tobacco, in the form of alcohol, and also other factors which will reduce other risk factors. Say, for example, if you are physically active, if you are eating right, if you are sleeping properly, if you are doing all your life without much stress in life, you can avoid many of these risk factors for many of the non-communicable diseases. If we are not able to do it, we have the provision of uh, programs like the National Tobacco Control Program, and also the Drug De-Addiction Program, or many activities which are done by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, which tells you to quit and to rehabilitate yourself so that you lead a healthy life. And we also know that there will be certain group of population who are already living with what is known as this NCDs, the group of people living with NCDs. For them, we also roll out a program to enable them to stick to the continuum of care by getting them diagnosed, by getting them the right medicines and the right diagnostics at an appropriate time. But there will still be certain population. Today, we are going to focus on that population. If at all, with all this happening in the background, if some of us happen to have a myocardial infarction or a heart attack, in layman's term, what do we do? How do we organize the logistics in such a way that we are able to provide something on the spot, or in the facility in the periphery, which may not be bigger than a community health center or a district hospital? What do we do there? And how do we take him there to the definitive care when we will be able to provide some more care which is not there in the peripheral healthcare delivery system? So in this whole gamut of activities, we all have a role to play as public health people for prevention, as emergency people for providing the definitive care at that point of facility where the patient might come or might arrive, and also at the definitive care. So it's a continuum of care, and on this aspect, I'm happy that we are going to deliberate upon the issues of myocardial infarction, both the STEMI as well as the non-STEMI, from a very learned expert. And I wish all of us, listen to her tentatively, and then try to find out how we can collaborate ourselves together to provide some healthcare delivery system oriented, intervention to those people who would be needing us at that hour of their time. So with this, I thank my NCD team for organizing this series of regular webinars, and today is one such webinar. And let's listen to the experts. Thank you very much. Over to you, Avinash.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for those insightful words. And with your blessings, now we would like to request our expert for the day, Professor Dugal Madam, to kindly take over and guide us through the various preventive aspects of CVD, and what should be the contribution of the medical officers and program managers of NPNCD at the state level, district level, and of course at the block level. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Avinash. So I will start sharing my screen. Are you able to see the screen? So 1 minute. How do we share the screen? Hello.
Can I request Addeshi from Tripur to kindly assist, madam?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Ma'am, there is an option share screen, the green. Of you, if you want, I can share on your behalf. I have a PPT.
Okay. Because I don't see, I see chat, raise hand, question answers, but I don't see any green option. Yeah. Okay. So you can, we can start with the first slide. So at the outset, I would like to thank Dr. L. Swasti Charanji for laying the context of this meeting. So why I chose this topic today when called for speaking on World Heart Day was that we had done a survey for the National Health Authority of 5 states, and it was seen. So there are two aspects for treatment of ST elevation MI. One is recognition of the symptoms by the patient. That means that is the aspect of patient education. The second is when the patient came to the PHC, in 70 to 80% of the point of first medical contact, that is when the patient came with chest pain, only injection diclofenac was given or injection Pantop was given, and the patient was sent to a higher center. So the entire golden hour, even after when the patient had come to the point of first medical contact, which was in certain cases a community health center, a primary health center, the patient was not treated and he was sent to a higher medical center, which was 1 or 2 hours away. So for to handle this aspect, that is what should be done when the patient comes to us. In this talk, I will be dealing with one is the symptoms of chest pain, which is the most important. Sometimes it is, the chest pain is so classical that you may not even wait for the ECG changes to occur. If the patient comes in 10 or 15 minutes, sometimes even the ECG changes may occur after half an hour. So first is you recognize the symptoms of the chest pain, then how to manage the chest pain, what are the basic medications, drugs which should be available, and what should be done when this patient comes to us, whether it is the primary health center, community health center, or the district hospital. So chest pain is one of the most common reasons of patients coming for medical care. And it can be of many types. It is an uncomfortable, unpleasant sensation in the anterior chest, and that can raise a concern for a cardiac problem. So when to recognize whether this pain is actually a heart attack or not? Next slide. Yeah, so it should be considered acute when there's a new onset of pain. So many times the patient is having some pain after walking for 1 or 2 kilometers, but then he says, no, since yesterday, only on walking a few steps, I am getting chest pain. So there's a change in the pattern and intensity and duration of the pain compared to the previous episodes of the patient. Next slide. So what is the probability that this chest pain is an ischemic chest pain? So on the left side of the screen, if this pain is more likely to be due to a heart attack, if it is it is in the center of the chest or on the left sided of the chest. It is a dull aching pain. It is like a pressure. जैसे छाती पे कुछ रख दिया है. That is what the patient says. He says ऐसा लगता है जैसे भार रख दिया है. So there may be pressure, squeezing, gripping, heaviness, tightness of the chest is often used. I'm feeling that the whole chest has become tight, and moreover, sometimes it is also associated with exertion or it is related to stress. That is, the pain is coming on taking a few steps and subsiding on taking rest. The chest pain which may be not be of ischemic origin, which could be muscular or pleuritic, is when it is associated with position, shifting. That is when he's moving his arm, when he's moving, twisting to the right side or the left side. Pain which is sharp, that it is like a needle prick. It is less likely to be ischemic in origin. Also, we have to see what is the patient like. When we see a patient, an elderly patient with diabetes and hypertension, there's more likely to be ischemia. However, when the patient is a young woman, 26 years, who is going about doing her work and has no risk factors like diabetes, hypertension, or family history, the chance of ischemia is less. Next. So Other symptoms which may be associated with ischemic pain is shortness of breath. Sometimes patient has dyspnea or breathlessness, may not have classical chest pain, nausea, severe nausea can be there. Pain is going to the left arm or the jaw. Sometimes they present with jaw pain, especially women and diabetics, or kind of numbness or ghabrahat and anxiety is associated with this pain. Patient feels a feeling of doom is surrounding him, and this kind of chest pain has to be taken seriously. Next. So this is, I have put this Bengali Lakshan kya hai heart attack ke, just to tell you that the language of the patient is very important when recording the symptoms of the chest pain. Whatever is the language, it can be Bengali, Hindi, Tamil, any language, you should put the symptoms as such. So what happens is in the primary health center, when the technician, suppose you're sleeping at 12 o'clock, and he just writes chest pain, it does not convey the meaning. So even my residents, I tell them just write the language of the patient in the first line. That is, patient is, he will say, mujhe bhari lag raha hai. So they will write bhari, because otherwise it does not, the technician will write chest pain, and in the morning you will, and you are not sure, is it classical ischemic pain or is it a non-anginal pain? Next. So here, if you see, the resident has written complaining of chest pain. So what is very important is you must document the time of the chest pain. So here it is 21st June 24 since 11 a.m. in the morning. So if the patient has come at 2 o'clock, treatment is different. If he has come at 6 o'clock in the evening, the treatment is likely to be different. So he has said retrosternal. Then he has written associated with ghabrahat. So patient said ghabrahat, we document ghabrahat and palpitations. Next slide. Here, could you play this video just to tell you, I'm presenting two cases of chest pain. How do they present? Could you raise the volume? I'm not able to hear. Anyways, let's go to the slide. Go back to the slide. Yeah. If you see the hand of this patient here.
सर मेरा ना घबराहट है ये दर्द उठाया भारीपन हुआ सीना में भारीपन पूरे सीना में ऐसा
So no, okay, fine. Fine, that's okay. So if you see the hand of the patient, it is like the whole hand is open and it is radiating to the left arm. No language is required when you see this. This is classical pain of acute coronary syndrome. So the whole hand is kept on the left side of the chest, associated with ghabrahat. She is not able to localize the pain, and she is saying it is radiating to the left arm. Next video. Play this video.
क्या तकलीफ है चेस्ट में कहाँ पे दर्द होता है इधर चलने पे और बैठने पे अच्छा चलने पे वो दर्द बढ़ता है या फिर वैसा ही रहता है
या कंटिन्यू ओके
वो वैसे ही रहता है और बैठे बैठे भी वैसे अच्छा ठीक
So this is the patient. With a finger she is pointing to her chest pain. So if she is able to point with a finger, it is most likely a muscular pain. Also, she says it is not associated with exertion. So these are the factors to identify a case of classical chest pain associated with acute coronary syndrome. Next.
क्या तकलीफ है
No, next slide. Yeah. The other is you must see what are the risk factors. Does the patient have diabetes? Does he have hypertension? Is there a family history of coronary artery disease? So if you see, this was a young man who came to us. He lost his elder brother at the age of 29 years. His mother got the heart attack at the age of 57. So even though he was having jaw pain, I did not send him to the ENT specialist. He has a strong family history. Brother has died at 29. We immediately admitted him and treated him for acute coronary syndrome. Next. The other thing is when he comes to your center, wherever, PHC or CHC, a physical examination must be done immediately. Record the vitals, the heart rate, the blood pressure. Is it 60? Is it 100? So 60 is very unstable. Or does he have significant tachycardia, more than 100? So he's unstable. He's in heart failure. Auscultate the chest. Are there any murmurs? Auscultate the lungs. Is it full of crypts? Is there fluid in the lungs? There's a lot of noise in the lungs. So the patient is in heart failure along with the heart attack, which is very serious, must be sent immediately by ambulance. Then you need to rule out other causes of chest pain like aortic dissection. So in aortic dissection, the pulses, the right and the left pulse will be different. So just record it in two arms, the blood pressure in the right and the left. Suppose it is 110 in the right and 60 in the left. This is aortic dissection. You will not treat it as a heart attack. Next. So tachycardia, pulmonary embolism, then pansystolic murmur. Aortic dissection is severe pain with pulse differential and chest X-ray showing a wide mediastinum. Next. So here is a patient of aortic dissection. If you see, it's like someone is stabbing him with a knife. You look at these fingers. It is like the pain is going from anterior to posterior. It is so a stabbing pain. Please take the differential blood pressure. Next. No, let's go to the next for time, want of time. Yeah, if you see it's radiating to the back. Yeah. So identify the thing is that you must identify the life-threatening causes, determine whether he is clinically stable, assess whether he has to be hospitalized, or it can be outpatient evaluation like that lady who had a finger pointing to her chest, and then you decide, give the management. Okay. So must take the saturation, the ECG, and if you have facility, chest X-ray. So ECG should be available at every PHC and CHC. And I would just like to point at this time that I had met a group of doctors who said the ECG machine is not working. So now there are a lot of made in India small ECG machines which are less than 25,000, 10 to 15,000, which can be purchased by a medical officer at any level in his purchasing power. So they are available on Amazon, and these machines are available. So you must have an ECG. You cannot say the ECG is not working. Saturation should be there. These two should be available at every level. Chest X-ray, if it is there, especially at the district hospital, should be done. But treatment should not be delayed. That patient is shifted for an X-ray and we waste 30 minutes. It can be done after giving the first line of management. Next. So unless you are very sure about a non-cardiac cause of chest pain, that patient is a known case of some peptic ulcer, alcoholic, or some other cause, you must send the patient treated as acute coronary syndrome and do an ECG within 10 minutes of arrival in the emergency department. So your center should be geared. So we have a lot of staff these days in the health and wellness centers. We should use them rationally and tell them if they are doing and keep them on 24 hours away and make the ECG available for 24 hours for these patients. Next. So the other is if troponins are present, which should be we should be able to do at the district hospital, because the level of troponin is valuable in diagnosis and also in management, because very high levels of troponin indicate that there's a very large amount of myocardial injury. ECG has to be done, and if you think ECG is not done, you can transfer to you can call the patient in the emergency department. Next. So here is, just you see, so we have the time, if you see on top, epigastric pain, 21st June 24 at 17 hours or something is written. Then here are the vitals. If you see, I showed this slide for the vitals: pulse, respiratory rate. If it is 30 or 40, patient is in failure. Then blood pressure, he is stable, 102. Saturation is 97%. But the patient has some minimal crypts. So he is in early stages of failure. CVS, no murmurs are there. Abdomen is soft. On the left side, the risk factors are written. He's a smoker, takes tobacco, and occasional alcoholic. Then ABG, if you have facilities, patient is stable. So this is ACS, evolved anterior wall MI, LV ejection fraction 70%, Killip class 2. Next slide. Here again, just to tell you the importance of time, this patient came to us in the OPD on, if you see on top, 14th Feb, but he had chest pain on 14 June and 6 June. So for last 8 days. So this is not an emergency, and the patient should be treated as a stable patient. Next. The other importance is, at least we should know the fundamentals of ECG. We'll quickly go over it in 5 minutes. Next. So the main point we know is P, QRS, J point, and ST segment has to be seen. This is a normal ECG. And J point is where the QRS segment becomes flat after the S wave, is the J point. Next. This is the J point. You identify that. Next. And so ST elevation is elevation of the J point. In acute MI is recognized as ST elevation. Yeah. And it should be present in 2 contiguous leads. Next. The shape of the ST segment is very important. In this tombstone shape, yeah, this one. If you show the ST elevation, the one with the red circle above, if the ST segment has this shape, then it is more likely to be ST elevation MI or myocardial infarction. However, in certain non-ST elevation MI and even in posterior MI, the second cartoon, yeah, the ST is concave upwards. Next. Next, yeah. ECG definition of STEMI is diagnosed if there is more than 1 millimeter ST elevation in 2 contiguous leads on the 12-lead ECG. Next. So these are the changes. First is the hyperacute T waves, then ST elevation. In the first stage is T waves become upright, then ST elevation, followed by Q waves, and T waves will invert. Next. So if you see the tall T waves, hyperacute comes in minutes to hours, then the ST elevation. Q waves, loss of R wave with Q waves, and inversion of T wave after 2 to 5 days. Okay. Reciprocal changes confirm in the opposite leads. So if it is anterior wall MI, we get ST depression in the inferior leads. That also confirms the diagnosis of MI. Next. So territory, if it is changes ST elevation V1 to V4, it is the LAD involved, which is the most important territory. And these patients have to be treated as like an emergency, because a very large amount of myocardium is involved. Others also circumflex, inferior leads RCA, and posterior is V7, V8, V9. Here you get an ST depression in V1 to V3 and no ST elevation. But again, you treat it as ST elevation MI because it is in the posterior part of the heart and we are not able to pick it up in the normal ECG. Next. LAD, and they have the worst prognosis because of the large infarct size. ST elevation V1 to V4. Next. So you see in V1 to V4, ST elevation is present. ST depression in 2, 3 AVF. You see the sagging ST segment. Next. Lateral is 1 and AVL. Next. So here you see 1 and AVL ST elevation and ST depression and inferior and leads and V1 to V3. Next. Inferior leads and reciprocal changes in A1 and AVL. Next. So here you see in the inferior leads 2, 3 AVF ST elevation and 1 in AVL ST depression. Okay. So, only inferior wall MI is usually a stable patient because it's the RCA which is involved, but sometimes they are hypotensive and then they are having RV infarcts, and we try to maintain their blood pressure by giving them a lot of fluids, and we avoid nitrates. This can be done by, you can do lead V4R on a right-sided ECG and you can recognize an RV myocardial infarction. Next. So, okay, this is a patient. Next here. So this is a normal ECG. So those notes were from the patient of aortic dissection. So you can rule out by a normal ECG that it is a non-coronary cause of non-coronary cardiac cause of chest pain. Next. So management of acute MI. Yeah. Next. Is that you must immediately restore the blood flow. wherever you are. So you don't need to have an impressive cath lab. Patient goes there, spends 3 hours to go there and has an open artery, but half of the myocardium is already dead. So it is the early restoration of complete infarct artery perfusion after the occurrence of acute occlusion. Already the patient comes in late after a few hours thinking acidity ho rahi hai, kuch aur ho raha hai. Next. So aspirin. So the problem today in all the PHCs or everywhere, even our tertiary care centers, is we don't get non-coated aspirin. Sorry, we always get coated aspirin. Any tablet, even when you order on Amazon, it is coated to prevent gastric acidity. But this aspirin is not the aspirin to be given in acute MI. It should immediately be absorbed. We don't need a coating at this stage and the first 10 minutes. So you can best in India is to give Dispirin. Just give Dispirin 325 milligrams and it immediately dissolves in the buccal mucosa and is absorbed. This is a very important point. You must ensure that it is available in your PHC, CHC. We tried to buy it. We are not able to buy it. So please keep Dispirin in all your wards and your CHCs. Next. The second drug to be given is dual antiplatelet therapy. We have to open the artery. So either clopidogrel or ticagrelor can be given. So Tica, you give 180 mg loading and 90 mg twice a day. Or clopidogrel 300 milligram loading can be given. Next. So loading dose 150 to 300 milligram of plain aspirin followed by 75 mg daily. Clopidogrel 300 is safer, especially when elderly patients, frail patients, followed by a maintenance dose of 75 milligram OD. Prasugrel is reserved for patients undergoing PCI. Next. Tica 180 mg orally and then 90 mg BD. Okay, next. A fraction. So you give a heparin bolus, 100 units per kg, and then you start an infusion, maintain an APTT of 60 to 80 seconds. And you give this for as long as patient is admitted with you for 3 days or 5 days, or enoxaparin can be given. It is expensive and usually runs out of stock. Unfractionated heparin is easier to procure and can be given easily and monitored easily. 1 mg per kg BD subcutaneously for a minimum of 2 days, and it is continued till the patient is stable. Next. Statin, high dose statins should be given, 80 grams of Atorva or 40 milligrams of Rozova should be given as they help to stabilize the plaque. Next. So I will tell you this very interesting case. This is Dayal Singh. I know. So this case happened in July 24 and we lost the patient. So he went to this Almoda PHC, 46-year-old man, and you see the treatment which has been given. Injection Pantop, injection diclofenac treatment. He's having classical chest pain radiating to the left hand. No ECG has been done. These 2 drugs are given to this patient. Pain has not subsided. Then they decide to give a sorbitrate and send him to AIIMS in a 2 hours ambulance. So by the time he comes to us, blood pressure is 60 millimeters. He's in cardiogenic shock. We could not save the patient. So it is at this point, I'll tell you how the prescription should look. Next. Yeah, so here you see patient came at 10:15. They're still waiting for the ambulance. It arrived at 11. This is documented very well, but treatment has not been given. Next. So this is how your prescription should look like. Immediately he comes, Ecosprin 300 mg stat, followed by Ecosprin 75 mg OD, Ticagrelor 180 mg stat, followed by 90 mg BD. Can be clopidogrel also. Atorvastatin 80 mg stat, followed by 40 mg HS. Injection unfractionated heparin 5000 IB unit stat. So moment you give this, you actually have stabilized the patient and saved a life. So forget that thing in the cardiologist and has to go to that cath lab. No, please do this and save lives of patients. Even we do it in the ED before we are able to take the patient in the cath lab. And these are simple drugs. Next. So this is, I mapped out for, in Madhya Pradesh, once I took the class, so we mapped out a tehsil. So these tehsils in a district, district Betul. So we also took out the distance. What is the time to shift the patient from the PHC to the district hospital for thrombolysis? So all of you, I would request that you see what are the tehsils coming under you. What is the time for transfer? It is less than 60 minutes and you're ready for thrombolysis at the district hospital, okay. If you can shift him in less than 60 minutes to a primary PCI strategy, fine. But if you are not, but that treatment which I said has to be given. Thrombolysis and primary PCI can be decided on the travel times. Next. So here we have mapped 47 minutes to the district hospital, but to the primary to the PCI stage, it was about 3 hours. So it was best you give this treatment at this PHC, transfer to district hospital for thrombolysis because all monitors are available. Next. And now there's so much staff. I mean, they say, okay, we have 2 nurses, but if you see at the district hospital, I mean, there's so many staffs given by the government in different specialities. And I'm sure taking an ECG can be taught to nurses across the specialities. So at least the ECG service keeps running. Next. So ED, you measure the saturation. If it is less than 90%, you start oxygen, even less than 95, but above 95, do not give oxygen. Then NTG, along with that treatment, which was which has to open the coronary artery, you please relieve the pain of the patient, give NTG, unless he is hypotensive or tachycardic. Adequate analgesia must be given. Please relieve the pain because stress causes the patient to be a patient can become unstable, be tachycardic. And the other is beta blockers. So if the patient has has a heart rate more than 100, please give IV metoprolol 5 mg slowly. Can be repeated 3 doses. Can be repeated so the patient becomes stable and does not go into ventricular arrhythmias. Next. So time is most important. He should undergo fibrinolysis within 90 minutes of first medical contact. So from the PHC to the district hospital, the transfer time is usually less than 90 minutes. Please be prepared for lysis. Next. And in the first 12 hours, you can give thrombolytic therapy, anything which is available. Even streptokinase is beautiful. I mean, we keep fighting for retiplase, tenecteplase, and other drugs, but streptokinase is successful in 70 to 75% of the time. Very safe drug, goes over 30 minutes. Next. Yeah, at substantial risk of, please take a history of any intracranial bleed or history of trauma, head trauma, so that the risk for or any uncontrolled, if the blood pressure is more than 200, you cannot thrombolyze. Patient should not have a neurological bleed or an ICH. Next. So fibrinolysis is best done as soon as possible after 6 hours and 12 hours, but after 24 hours, it has no role. Maximum best action is in the first 3 hours, then 6 hours, but can be given up to 12 to 24 hours also. Next. So your lytic bolus, once he comes to you, should be in less than 10 minutes. It should be loaded and kept ready as the patient is transferred from the PHC. Next. So if he's in the primary PCI, but if the cath lab is busy, then and they have already taken a case, then do not wait for primary PCI because the wire should cross in 60 minutes. So if the case is taking 2 hours, please go ahead with thrombolysis. Next. So early recognition of STEMI improves outcomes. Regardless of the setting, ECG must be obtained. Substantial patients are being transferred to the ED without a pre-hospital ECG. It can be done in the ambulance or at any level. Next. So there were 2 parts of this whole management. One was how to treat the patient when he comes to us at the PHC or the CHC. The first is spreading awareness in the community regarding the symptoms of the heart attack. So it should be done in the local languages. Like here, this is kind of on World Heart Day. Please, you should go out and increase the awareness of the patients. Use the local language so you're able to reach the maximum number of patients, have literature ready. So earlier, so patients many times sit in the house. उनको लगता है मेरे को acidity हो रहा है, they keep popping and those pills inside, taking a painkiller and come at a very late stage to us. So next. So have material in various languages, and so this is the way we can, with pictures and the local literature, we can increase patient awareness of symptoms of heart attack, so they present early to us and are in a more stable condition. Thank you, and I'm open to any questions. Yeah. This was a cartoon, the last cartoon. Just go to the cartoon, because many doctors have come to me, just the last slide, and they have said that no, tenecteplase is better. It is costing 35,000. Then retiplase is 17,000. But across the board, we say streptokinase is the drug which has been used, and it is very, very rare that it does not open the artery. So many of these studies are funded by the pharma companies. So the difference in, because we are going to, as it is, thrombolize the patient and refer the patient to the cath lab. So if the artery does not open, so why spend so much money initially, and when the cost effectiveness is not very high? Okay. Questions? I'm ready for questions now. You can leave that, yeah.
The participants, I think, ask the questions directly, or maybe write in the chat box. In the chat box, I think, are there any chances of reocclusion after giving fibrinolytic agent? How to differentiate MI from acidity? I think this question will be pertinent for a lot of people. How to differentiate MI from acidity if there is no ECG facility? So, Madam,
yeah, actually, you're very right. But first of all, I want to answer the question about ECG facility and a case when I was in Mumbai. There was a young man, 40-year-old. He had classical acidity symptoms. Sometimes it is very difficult because he keeps saying jalan ho rahi hai, and it can be acidity. That time ECG is required, and nowadays, I mean, we have 2 or 3 startups, and the machine is only 8 to 10,000. There's so many machines available. Do not wait for the tender and buying a 2 lakh machine. Just use your power of 25 or 50,000 now and order. You can keep 3 machines. So I don't think nowadays not having an ECG machine is an excuse. Most of the times, the risk factors help in the diagnosis. In case we want some clinical markers, a patient with diabetes, obese patient, hypertensive patient, patient with a strong family history are most likely to, we must have a very high index of suspicion. Then some acidity, usually patients have a very long history of eating and khatte dakar or burning sensation. But however, ECG should be done because you can be involved in a legal battle. So that man I was talking about, I was given the case to investigate. He lost his life because 24 hours doctors kept giving Pantop, and a case was filed against that medical practitioner. So ECG should be there. Please be proactive and buy the ECG machines, and keep a very strong suspicion. So if you rule out an ECG, if ECG is normal, you are safe legally also. Any other?
Another question in the chat box says, can we, suppose we have to keep some sort of a first aid at home to prevent death from heart attack. So, what should be the drugs in that, or what should be the composition of the first aid kit to be kept at home for heart care?
A lot of studies are happening. So the most important drug is to have Dispirin. Keep it in your pocket, keep it in your purse. That should be the awareness campaign for this time. Just keep the Dispirin in your, we keep money in our wallet, keep a tablet of Dispirin and take it. Usse there'll be koi nuksan nahi hoga. Whether it is heart attack or not, just swallow it and then go to the emergency department.
In continuation to that, one of the questions, does sorbitate actually have a role in acute MI? You just now told that to keep a tablet of Dispirin in the pocket.
Sorbitrate, Dispirin will open the artery, which is life-saving. Sorbitrate in patients of CAD, we ask them to keep it because it relieves the pain. And it also, it cannot open the clot, but if the it can open the spasm. So it helps. It decreases the pain and opens and restores the blood flow. But Dispirin and antiplatelets are most effective. So we have to decrease the pain. So you saw our prescription, and if the patient is having ongoing pain, we always add Sorbitrate to it.
I'm just going to add. How management differs non-STMI?
Non-STMI, well, we don't thrombolize the patient because of the difference in the thrombus. So, but you can give them aspirin, give them antiplatelet, give them unfractionated heparin, and refer them to a primary PCI center. So the initial treatment you can give, except for the thrombolysis, you can give load the patient with dual antiplatelets, high dose statin, and let him be referred to the cardiac center. Can give Sorbitrate also in this patient.
So I think, ma'am, most pertinent questions which are relevant from legal point of view, we have gone through them, and it is already we have already 1 o'clock.
So UFH, there's a question, should be given directly or dilution is needed. It is diluted. It is written how you have to calculate the dose, and your nursing staff should know. And in UFH, two strengths come. One is 5,000 units per ml and one is 25,000 units per ml. So please see that you give the correct dose. STK not available at CHC and PHC. Oh, that is fine. You can transport the patient to the district hospital. Please give all the loading doses as I said. They are also very useful in establishing this thing, your unfractionated heparin bolus and this thing. For pregnant women, chest pain in pregnant women is usually due to dissection of the coronary artery. And this patient should be referred to a PCI center. It usually happens, coronary artery dissection like aortic dissection is known to happen. Availability of ECG and STK at CHC level. So you can map out, purchase Dispirin. Dispirin is so cheap. I mean, Dr. Avinash can better tell you. Non-ST. In IV metoprolol, 5 milligrams, slowly to be given, very slowly. And analgesic Sorbitrate is useful. The other analgesic is morphine, which is very useful. You don't give propofol and other anesthetic, but morphine is one of the most useful drugs. And after Sorbitrate, first give Sorbitrate. It can be repeated 3 times, 5 milligram every 10 minutes. Please watch the blood pressure and let the patient be lying down. In inferior wall MI, beta blocker is usually not used unless, madam, cause of heart attack. Now, so many people have died due to heart attack below 30 years. So below 30 years, heart attacks, very strong family history, stress, here's lifestyle, what additional DG sir said in the initial talk. Lifestyle is very important. Family history, certain families it runs. So please, they should be screened if there's a strong family history for any risk factors, and we can start drugs before an MI. Some association with in pregnant women, I told you. Clopidogrel 300 milligrams to 600. Usually 300 for elderly, frail patients whom you are going to give thrombolysis, and then give 75 OD. After Q wave is developed, give everything and then send the patient. Only thing, we may not open the artery, because opening the artery actually is not important after 48 hours, and maximum one trial said 72. But after 3 days, no point opening the artery unless you have shown by other tests that there is ischemia, like SPECT or dobutamine stress echo or something. Some test should be done to show that the area is viable. If it is scarred, then you are giving blood to a scarred territory. Since Tanya came to me with just leg pain after walking few meters, okay, I think we are done. Maybe he has an RVMI. So yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much on behalf of the audience in the program division and NPNCC program division. We are highly thankful for the time and your guidance which you have shared with the nodal officers and medical officers from all the district hospitals, CHCs, PHCs, and of course we would always look forward to you for your continual support. And for more future webinars, we shall, of course, get back to you. And with this, we can, I think, end the meeting. Avdeshji, we can log out.
Yes, sir. With your permission, we can wind up the session.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Bhanu Dugal, ma'am. And thank you so much, Dr. L. Swasti Charan, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Shikha Vardhan. Thank you, Rahul, for supporting this webinar. And thank you to all the participants. Thank you.